Remember the metaverse? It was a huge failure. Let's talk about why. Welcome to Dave is Not AI. I'm Dave, an AI expert and an AI skeptic. Let's get started. So remember the metaverse? Actually, we were dealing with it about 5 years ago in 2020, but it actually dates back to a novel written in 1992 by Neal Stephenson. It was called Snow Crash, which described a persistent shared 3D virtual world where people appeared as avatars and moved between digital streets, businesses, and social spaces. And so we saw that really kind of as an emerging trend over time. And what happened was a few companies, including Meta, they actually changed their name around the metaverse, which was once Facebook, jumped right into it and really dedicated their whole time and energy into promoting the concept of what a metaverse was and the ability to create this virtual world where people could live in it, work in it, even have relations and families in it, weird things like that. And ultimately, it was, deemed as kind of the next generation where things were going. And people understood at the time, it was during the pandemic, we were kind of living through Zoom. And what if we could enter a virtual world with our, Oculus virtual reality glasses and live this very satisfying life? But of course, we all know how that turned out. So my introduction to the metaverse was around 2020 timeframe, again, during the pandemic. And it was a big concept at the time. People were telling me about it. We're moving in this direction. All the businesses are going to operate in the metaverse. They were going to do sell some virtual real estate. That was always weird to me. And I think some actually got sold, but it was odd that we're trying to replicate the real world in something that wasn't real. And it just struck me as something that was weird that would never take off. And when I mentioned that to people, they pushed back. They said, no, this is something that's going to be a real large deal and we better get behind it because businesses and retail space are going to move in this direction. And what happened was we did see some initial interest in it, but at the end of the time, I don't think business really picked up on it. They didn't see it as any kind of a productivity gain. Even though we were living on Zoom at the time with the pandemic, that was good enough. We didn't need to enter a virtual world where we're wearing, virtual reality glasses and basically dealing with the avatars of ourselves. So obviously more science fiction-y than people needed at the time or thought was productive at the time. And so it just fell short. So what was interesting to me was the number of people who were all in on the metaverse. Consulting firms were creating metaverse practices, if you remember that. Lots of white papers, lots of videos on the metaverse and its value moving forward. And probably spent a good $1 billion in marketing all in moving after the concept of the metaverse. And so it was interesting to me that everybody was so immersed in it and thought it to be the next generation of the technology. And that's where the investments were being made. And obviously those turned out to be not good investments, not good use of time. And eventually the whole thing just petered out. And what's also funny to me too, is that when these trends go away, and most of them do, people don't do a post-mortem on why they went away and what they did right and what they didn't do right. They just kind of memory hole it. It just becomes a forgotten thing. So the core experience just wasn't compelling enough. Chunky hardware, the Oculus glasses that I had, I was actually given them for free by a vendor or something. It was a tchotchke giveaway, but always gave me a headache. Mediocre graphics. I never liked the graphics in those areas. It didn't perform up to specs the way I thought that it should be performing. And the social spaces that felt empty, made the future of the internet feel worse than what we already had. And so it wasn't an upgrade in our use of the internet. It was definitely a downgrade in how we were dealing with each other. And people just found it initially very silly. In other words, most people would use the metaverse, have a demo at a conference and things like that and just walk away. That was interesting, but it wasn't game changing. And I think that's what the industry concluded. And definitely that's what the market concluded. So big tech tried to declare the metaverse a paradigm shift from the top down instead of letting it emerge organically from the real user behavior and real use cases. So this was definitely a case of the tail wagging the dog, where the marketing from the big tech firms were telling everybody that the metaverse was the next generation of technology and they better get on board or they're going to miss something really awesome. this is going to be the next internet, this is going to be the next AI. And those sorts of words were being used, and they didn't have anything to back it up. There were no business cases. You couldn't show me where the metaverse was implemented at a particular business where suddenly they had a spike in productivity, because it never happened, because anytime they tried to implement it, and there was a few case studies out there, it just fell flat. People didn't get it. People didn't use it. And people thought it was silly. So the friction was enormous. Headsets, logins, motion sickness. I had the motion sickness for sure. Onboarding. While the payoff was vague, the hangout as a floating torso in low-res conference room wasn't something that attracted people. And I think this was, in essence, a solution looking for a problem. And there really was no, fundamental push for people to get or exchange information with other people beyond some of the tactical ways we're doing it currently and did it today. There was videos and social media and Zoom calls, things like that. It's perfectly fine for the majority of businesses out there. And if you look at what the metaverse was pushing, there was nothing that was going to be a benefit beyond that. In other words, you're just dealing with people, using, 3D animations, which is leveraging, so you live within a virtual world. And I think that at the end of the day, it didn't solve a business problem. And if it didn't solve a business problem, businesses weren't going to use it. So investors and companies chase the narrative more than the fundamentals of what the technology could do, mistaking hype, rebrands, and keynote demos for actual product marketing fit. So the amount of hype that was out there around the metaverse, and if you go back and read some of the articles and some of the videos that were around at the time, was amazing. And to me, the case study was how far the marketing dollars and the hype machine can go to get out way ahead of a market that just didn't exist. And so, of course, the metaverse was, thought about around for a while, was kind of diminishing. AI came along and, pretty much everybody forgot about it. So people weren't asking for more immersion and isolation. They wanted more authenticity, flexibility, and convenience, which mobile and short form content delivered, far better. Our phones are perfectly fine for who uses them and what we use them for. I think that's about as immersive as we want to get. Human beings have a tendency to overestimate the amount of technology they're going to tolerate. Even though we live in a technology world, and I'm a technologist, and so I love technology, I love all the items out there, I love my devices, things like that. There is a certain point where it just doesn't make any sense to continue. In other words, it's as good as it's going to get. It's not going to get much better. We are going to provide, a better interface, make it a bit more faster, higher bandwidth, things like that. But where we are right now in utilization of the technology, it's going to be perfectly adequate for what we need it for. And I think as humans, we like that. So in hindsight, AI and lightweight creator tools, gave us far more visible productivity and creativity gains than the metaverse ever did. So talent and capital simply rotated to where the real value was. And so we shifted focus, the market shifted focus, all the tech providers out there, like I mentioned, they forgot it. They forgot they ever mentioned the word metaverse. I've watched all the, websites getting changed and all the papers getting pulled down and, people memory holding a lot of what the metaverse was. And they moved on to other things. And of course, one of the biggest tech trends we've seen in a while, which is the rise of generative AI, which came about in 2022, basically assured that the metaverse wasn't going to be used anymore, remembered anymore. And everybody reinvested. Obviously, there's the company Meta with Mark Zuckerberg. He got behind it. He was looking at this to be a huge transformation that his company was going to benefit from. So that went away. And so he lost that. But at the end of the day, I think we won. The fact is that every technology trend, no matter how hyped or no matter how many marketing dollars are behind it, won't necessarily work for the industries and the people that adopt the technology. In this case, businesses, retail market, all the human beings out there rejected the metaverse. And I think for the right reasons. It wasn't going to add value. I think it was a downgrade in the way in which we're going to use the internet. And to many people, including myself, it seemed creepy. Well, let me know if you agree with me. Some people are still talking about the metaverse and its ability to, add value. So there's many people who live in, virtual worlds and they do VR games right now. And And so yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. But the notion that we're all going to live in a virtual world and interact with each other's avatars was just a bridge way too far, and it wasn't going to make it. So let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if it has a value. Let me know if we should be considering looking at it in the future. So don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos on this channel. Also check out my InfoWorld Cloud Computing blog, my 100 plus LinkedIn learning courses, and of course my generative AI architecture course out on Go Cloud Careers. And finally, my latest books, Unlocking the Power of Cloud and An Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing. So until next week, you guys stay very, very safe. The magical YouTube algorithm thinks this is another one of my videos that you should watch next.